Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock. I'm Sophie, and this is Bella.
I'm just so excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
Bella was abroad last semester, so I didn't meet her until probably like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I heard a lot about you before you got here, or
That's so sweet.
before you came back. And so I was excited to meet you, and then I finally put a face to the name and the stories, and you were just as cool as they said.
Oh, you're too kind.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Your room is just so cute.
Thank you. We tried to make the most out of our bunk bed situation.
Right.
I was so upset when we first got assigned here.
Yeah.
Which is dramatic, and I had a moment, and then I got over my moment.
Right.
But fun fact, my dad's room when he was here in
I didn't know your dad went here.
It was really long. That was rude. My dad's not that old, but he was across the
Dad,
hall.
if you're listening.
Sorry, Dad. He's like directly across the hall was his freshman dorm.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool. And I found a picture the other day.
It's going
He
away.
sent me a photo the other day of him in his freshman dorm, and it looked the exact same. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
next year's gonna be an upgrade, though.
I know.
You're gonna be
It's
like,
gonna be
what is
so
life?
nice.
This is crazy.
Yeah. Okay, tell us all about yourself. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm from Greenville, so I grew up really close to Furman. I learned how to literally ride my bike on the trail that goes around the lake, so that's really funny. And
what high school did you go to?
I went to J.L. Man.
Okay,
Yeah.
I went to White Hampton.
I knew that, I think.
Okay, that's
Quite
so
crazy.
fun.
Literally,
sorry,
crazy.
continue.
No, you're so good. I don't know, what else do you want to know? I'm an only child.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm planning on going to law school, but we'll see what happens with that. I've been led in a lot of interesting directions with like careers and stuff, so we'll see how that ends up.
Why did you choose Furman?
It was literally the only option. Like, I applied all over the place. I wanted to leave. College for me was like, I'm getting out from under my parents' wings. I want to go as far away as possible. My parents were so mad. I applied to like 4 or 5 schools in California. I applied to schools in Texas, Colorado, literally all up the East Coast. Yeah, this is the only in-state school I applied to, and I only applied here because my mom works here. And I ended up getting financial aid back from other places, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And the best option was Furman, and I was so mad about it. But there's no place I'd rather be. So it was really all the other doors were closed.
Yeah. The Lord is like kind in that. Like in the moment, it's so frustrating being like, why did you close all these doors? And then it happens, and it's like, oh, you're so kind.
It's like, oh, this is where I was supposed to be.
Sweet. And then where'd you go abroad again?
I was in New Zealand with 3 of my best friends.
That's
and
so
it was
cool.
So awesome. And so hard, but so awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Probably.
Eventually. Okay.
Yeah.
Start with your testimony wherever you want.
Yeah. So I was baptized as a baby and grew up going to church until I was probably like 8 years old.
Okay.
And around that time we moved from just like one house to another, but pretty like not far away, same state, but just like I think it was like Greer to Greenville or something like that. And so the church that we had been going to was just too far to go.
Yeah.
And also around that time, I started playing soccer competitively. And so I don't know why they do this, but we had games on Sundays.
Yep.
And so there are a lot of Sundays that, we didn't go to church because of that, but also we just never really found another church home after that. And it wasn't until age 12 that I even questioned it because it just wasn't something I really was thinking about. But I went and stayed with my grandma for 3 days. And she has been so influential in my faith. She's just so awesome.
Yeah.
And she took me to this little camp that her church was hosting that I was supposed to go to, but I wasn't able to make it. So we just went to one worship night. Yeah. And I there's no other way to explain it, but like I was literally brought to my feet. I remember walking up to the front of the room and being like, why am I doing this?
Right.
And I'm on my knees at the altar. I'm like repenting. I'm literally like sobbing.
Yeah.
And my mom was about to have surgery and I was just praying over that. And I was also simultaneously like, God, like it's been so long since I've talked to you. I'm so sorry. And I felt so small and he felt so big.
Yeah.
And people started laying their hands on me and praying over me.
Whoa.
And I walked away from that, and I would say like not a lot of people have that click moment, like that very like obvious moment that, oh, God is real. Right. But that was mine.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily me being saved and living a different life because I was 12.
Right.
But it was me being like, oh my gosh, there's a God of the universe that knows me, that loves me, and I'm so small and he's so big.
Right.
And I remember going home from that and walking through my front doors, and my dad goes, there's something different about you.
Whoa.
And I was like, Dad, I got, like, this happened. It was crazy. And all this stuff. And he immediately was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. We haven't been going to church. And so We tried out a couple of places and like had a conversation as a family about it, and didn't love any of the places we tried. And then, you know, the next weekend I had soccer, and then the weekend after that I had soccer, and then 3 weeks later and the conversation was forgotten. And so and obviously my experience at that church was not for like with my grandma was not forgotten by any means, but it was something that as the weeks went by I thought about it less and less. And so it just kind of like fizzled out. And then the next time I remember just like having a moment with the Lord was in high school. And every once in a while, and it especially started whenever I could drive myself and I had those long drives in the car to soccer practice or to school. And I would just feel glimpses of him and just be brought to tears in listening to worship music or something like that. And I would call them little Jesus moments. And you know, that would happen and I'd be like, oh my gosh, God, you're here. And then I would forget about it again. And I would just kind of go about my day. And so this is definitely like a theme of my story is the Lord literally sprinting after me, shaking me, being like, I'm here, listen to me, hear me, like I'm here with you. And I'm like, oh cool, bye. Like, like you know, like
nice, awesome.
That's so cool, but I'm like doing my own thing, so like you're gonna have to wait. And senior year of high school, COVID was really hard for me, and so I went through like a really hard time with that. And I was kind of getting my bearings back on my feet, and that led me to the Lord a little bit. And so I was like reading a book that was kind of cool at the time, and I was having conversations, and I finally had some friends that like were Christians and kind of were talking about Jesus. And I never had a friend group in high school either. So I think that also coming into college, that was something I was like, I want that. The ideal 5 guys, 5 girls, you do everything together kind of thing that everyone seems like is the best ever. And so, yeah, I never had that in high school. So that was just kind of another thing. But yeah, it was senior year and I'd become close friends with this boy. And somewhere we were on the phone and I just told him my story, like with my grandma. And he was like, well, that's literally so cool that you just share your testimony. And I was like, oh, that's what that's called? That's kind of cool. I was like, I don't know. Awesome. And he was like, yeah, do you want to go to church on Sunday with me and like one of my other friends that he knew? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I haven't been in probably 2 years. Let's do it. Maybe 2 years ago at Christmas or something. And so we go, and I remember being in there thinking, this is what I was made to do, is worship. This is so cool. And just loving it, and it was just so beautiful. Incredible. And then not that long after that, I found out that boy liked me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like a Christian sweet boy likes me. That's crazy. And then we started to date, I think June before I went to college. So like we did not have a foundation before we came to school. Not really. And it was a conversation of like, do we want to do this? It's going to be hard. And we both said, okay, yeah, sure. Also totally under saying, oh, we're in a Christian relationship. God is at the center. And the truth is neither of us actually knew what that looked like at the time. And also I think that me coming back to Jesus was wrapped up in going to church with him and feelings for him and like all these things. So both of us were just very intertwined with our relationship with Jesus. And so that was really causing identity issues. And I would love to say that I got to college and everything was perfect and I ran to Jesus' arms and I met community and all these things, but that took a lot of time. I'm grateful for where I'm at now. But it took a lot of time and it took a lot of going down the wrong path to find the right one. And we both got to college, and right before I got there, his older brother connected me with a girl that was a sophomore. Or that was going to be a sophomore, and I was a freshman, Caroline Griggs, actually. Sweet. And so I had her number. She, right when I got there, walked me through some of my classes and just like became a really sweet friend that I got close with.
She's the best.
She's really
actually the best.
Yes, she is the best. She's actually now my big now in Katie. So our family is just so precious. But yeah, so I got to know her, which that was literally such a God thing, like throwing her into my life to make sure that I had someone to be able to talk to, because I met this huge friend group probably 3 days into college, and like it was the ideal 5 guys, 5 girls, and I was like, I've done it. I've won. This is it. This is. And we were doing everything together, every single meal, like going to see movies, all of the things. And they were very much into the party scene. And that wasn't something I dabbled with like a ton in high school. It's definitely something I knew about. And maybe like, you know, I drank a couple times, but like nothing crazy. It wasn't something I I knew I wanted to do.
Right.
But I was also simultaneously, hey, I'm getting out from under my parents' wings and I can do whatever I want and I have these tastes of freedom. And so what's happening?
Right. Yeah.
And so I, got involved in all of that and was doing that every weekend. And then my boyfriend at the time was simultaneously doing that at Clemson.
Right.
He's at Clemson, I was at Furman. And we just both were tasting the freedoms that college had to offer. And then, he was also simultaneously my safe place. Like I would drive to see him whenever I was having a hard time at Furman.
Right.
All of these things, my identity was just like being tied into. Like
I ran out of storage again, so I'll be choppy. Sorry. I think something that's really interesting is coming into college is the freedom feeling, and then realizing that it's not freeing at all. No. And I'm sure you'll get there in your story, but that's something I've already had to realize. Being like, all these little things that seem so fun actually leave me more empty. And then what does it look like to like fully find freedom in Christ?
Right.
It's hard.
It's so
but
tempting.
Then when it comes, it's like, oh, this is what I'm being called to. So
it's like this is what true freedom feels like, actually. But yeah, so my identity is just wrapped up in all of these other things, friend group, like boyfriend, all just being the coolest person ever. Like I had this opportunity to be someone new, not necessarily new, but just be someone different that people didn't know me as already.
Yeah.
And I was just so lost, so lost. I was waking up, going out Saturday, waking up Sunday, feeling more empty than before.
Right.
And I was just really spiraling, to be quite honest. I was just lower and lower. And then also I had Caroline Griggs over here who was just speaking truth in life, inviting me to FCA, which I would go to. And her sweet friend group of sophomores at the time just really, really poured into me.
Sweet.
And I remember one weekend we went out and bought me a Bible. And I was just like, whoa, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And like these girls want to hang
really
out with me. Like, really?
Right.
And so I was seeing how her friends and her were living and how much joy they were finding, and they weren't going out.
Right.
And they were loving one another so well.
Right.
And all I could think was, wait, I kind of want that joy.
Right.
Why don't I have that joy? That's not fair. Like
Right.
I'm doing all these things,
that,
but I don't have that.
Right.
And so that was part of me realizing, wait, maybe the things, all these things that I'm doing aren't actually benefiting me in any way. Maybe these aren't what it looks like to find joy.
Yeah.
And so I remember like wrestling with that, sometimes going to bed at night and being like, what am I doing? Like, who even am I? I would go home and my relationship with my parents was like weird. We'd always been best friends. And I was like, who the heck? Who am I? Like, this is so weird. This isn't right. This isn't normal. And I remember very vividly one weekend I was planning on going to a Clemson game with my boyfriend and like driving down there, and I just gotten like a bad grade on a test, and so I was just I was like, oh, cling to this.
Right.
And I remember feeling so strongly, don't go, like don't go, don't do it.
Yeah.
And I cried in a Kava parking lot because I was like, but I want to see him.
Go.
Like, what do you mean don't go?
Right.
And I was also starting to feel sick. Like I was feeling sick, like physically sick. I was like, oh my gosh, am I getting sick right now? And I woke up the next day and I went, and I was like, whatever, I'm gonna go.
Right.
So I went. Both of us had a decent bit to drink, and we crossed boundaries that we had told each other would not be crossed, that we had talked about, that we were like, oh, all of your roommates are doing this with their girlfriends, but we're not, so we're better, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And I woke up the next morning, and there's no other way to explain it, but it felt like there was a brick on my chest.
Yeah.
I have never felt so ashamed. I've never felt so guilty.
Yeah.
I've never felt so horrible. Gosh. And all I could think was, I just got this Bible and I'm deciding that I love this life that Jesus has to offer. Now I'm never going to get it. Now I'm never going to get there. Now I'm never going to have that because I messed up this bad. There's no coming back from this.
Yeah.
And I just remember both of us sitting there, and I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't drink, I didn't want to get up. And he was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, this is so bad, we did this, and like blah, blah, blah. And we're both crying, and that was just my rock bottom, to be quite honest. And I drove back to Furman that afternoon, and I didn't even know who I was. And I decided I wanted that my life to not look like that anymore. And so I went to FCA on Tuesday, and I'm talking to his older brother, and he told me, he was like, I don't want to tell anybody. I'm not telling anyone about this. And I was like, okay, well, I have to, because I can't do I can't do this by myself. And he was like, no, it's fine. You can tell people. But I knew, I was like, he feels so guilty. He feels horrible. Like, he needs to talk to people too. So I remember talking to his brother and be like, you should call your brother. And he's like, did you guys break up? Is something wrong? And I'm like, no. And I'm starting to cry. And Caroline sees me from across the room, and she grabs my arm. She's like, we're gonna go outside for a second. And so we go outside to her car, and I'm sobbing. She's holding my hands. I'm telling her everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's definitely not gonna be friends with me after this. She's gonna be like, this girl is horrible. Like, she's, I don't know. And she loved me. And there was not a glimpse of judgment at all. And she made me feel safe and seen. I slept on her floor that night. That was totally not allowed, because I was definitely going through rush, and it was before that. And so that was definitely not allowed. But I slept on her floor, and I remember her telling her, but I don't think I should break up with him, because like, I don't think that's what would be best for me. And she said, well, what does Jesus think is the best thing for you? And I was like, I don't know. And so I went to bed that night thinking about it. And I felt very convicted that we both kind of needed to find Jesus for ourselves. And so I broke up with him. And that was so hard, but also I dove straight into Jesus. It's like I went straight from the shame and guilt, and then I saw the love, and I grabbed it. And it was my lifeline, to be quite honest.
That's so cool.
And I was reading my Bible. I remember asking a girl, where do I start? I don't even know where to start. And she goes, start in John. John is always a great place.
I always say John.
Always John. It's such a great place to start. And I'm so glad I started there. But I started in John. And I mean, it blossomed. All I wanted was more of it. And nothing was enough. And it was what I looked forward to every single day, was coming and just sitting with the Lord.
That's so cool.
And but I still, at this point, was starting to not look like the friend group that I had. And so I was changing, but that wasn't changing. And so then I was in a place coming back for recruitment after that of, wait, I don't really relate to you guys anymore. Wait, you guys think I'm so uncool because I don't really want to go out anymore. And we don't have anything in common. We don't have anything to talk about. We don't have this shared experiences. And so I remember praying, like, if this is where I'm supposed to be, if I'm still supposed to stay at Furman, Lord, you're gonna have to show me some people. I'm gonna need something, because I have some sophomores that are awesome, but they're not, they're not my age. They're not my friend group, and and they totally were friends, and they still are friends, and they always will be. But I just knew that I needed my own friends too. And my boyfriend and I actually got back together right before recruitment as well, because he was like, he had started going. He called me, and he was like, no, I feel like I have just really seen glimpses of the Lord, and I've started reading my Bible over break and all this stuff. And he's like, this, and this are going to be different now. He's like, point, period, blank. Like, this was wrong. I did this wrong. We did this wrong. And so we kind of like set up rules, set up boundaries, like, not going to spend the night anymore at your apartment, and all of that. And so we had started dating again. And that honestly looked completely different. Which was really cool. But I was still, and I would go visit him, and I'd be like, wait, your friend group's awesome. Because he found his people, and then I was still waiting for mine. And I remember it was after Rush. It was in March, and Furman was going to March Madness, the basketball tournament. And we were playing in first round, and they were giving away free tickets. And a girl in my sorority just got a free ticket, my grade. She was in my grade. And I walked into the pack after having prayed just then again for, Lord, like, please send me friends. I'd been just talking to my mom on the phone too about it. And two girls are on the elliptical, and they're like, Bella, Bella, Bella. And so I go over there, and I'm like, yes, guys, like, what's going on? And they go, do you want to go to Orlando this weekend? We should go. We should go watch the game. And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Sure,
Which meant totally skipping school. Like, totally. And so I call my mom, and I'm like, can I skip class? Like, I just got invited. She's like, yes, go. Like, go do your thing. Please, you're making friends. So it was Corinne and Shay and Micah. And so the four of us went together, and I literally did not know them, like, hardly at all. And it was the sweetest weekend. And shared our stories in the car with each other.
That's incredible.
It was just, I just saw glimpses of Jesus all over it.
Yeah.
Wow. And all I could think was, holy answered prayer, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And leaving freshman year, I did like a ministry internship and everything, and I just fell in love with serving. I fell in love with the Lord. I was growing. It's so interesting because once you're on fire for Jesus, it's like you have this rapid change in you where, looking back, I don't even recognize myself with a month difference between the two.
Right.
And it was just the most beautiful transformation of my heart, of my mind, of my spirit, of new eyes, new light to see the world in, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I did an awesome internship that summer, and then my boyfriend broke up with me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best things ever, because I think that we were both holding each other back.
Yeah.
And yeah, our relationship looked different and it was good, but it wasn't what was for us at that moment.
Yeah.
And going from that, I just, every single morning, all the times that we would be on the phone or anything, I filled out with Jesus. Whoa. So walking from class to class, I would be in prayer.
Yeah.
Our morning or night phone call, I would be in my Bible.
Yeah.
And then I had all these other friends that I was talking about the Lord with, and it was just so cool.
That's so cool.
And sophomore year was just so transformative. Friendships, got really involved in FCA.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just was like, wow, I really love
so
Jesus.
Cool.
I feel like I'm growing so much. I feel like I actually am getting to a place where I can pour out now, which is so cool.
That's awesome.
Because all I want to do is give back to all these people that were giving to me.
Right.
And I also kind of always knew at firm when I wanted to go abroad. Too.
Yeah.
So then I applied for abroad, and I got into New Zealand with a couple of my friends, and we went there. And honestly, just the whole entire, like, looking back on my college experience, it was just the Lord, like I said earlier, just shaking me.
Yeah.
And just sprinting after me. And every time I said, hi, bye, he'd be like, no, I'm here still, though. Like, I'm right behind you. Or, like, grab my hand, I'd come over here. And I'd be like, I'm good. And taking his hand has been the best decision of my life, of course.
Yeah.
And has just been the biggest blessing.
Yeah.
And it's just been so transformative.
Goodness. That's so cool.
But yeah, that's kind of my story.
Yeah. That's awesome. I have so many thoughts, but I think a lot of it does go back to, like, taking his hand in that. Like, growing up, and, sometimes as a kid, all you're doing is following your parents. And sometimes you can't control certain things happening. But then the Lord being like, with your grandma, like, here, take my hand. Yeah. And then a little bit later, here, take my hand. And we're going to run. But he just is so kind to keep pursuing us. And then, honestly, like you said, you didn't have a ton of friends in high school, and that loneliness feeling. But then, so like, okay, here, take my hand. And then coming to college, being like, whoa, the world, like, freedom and all of these things, being like, okay, here, take my hand. And sometimes he uses his people to do that for us. Like, physically, as a guy invited you to church, or Caroline was like, come on, I got you. Yeah. But then even just, I think the shame is something that really just stands out so much to me, because that is so real. And just the thing of being like, that was too far. And sure, there's conviction 100%, and there's a purpose for that. But then it's like, he doesn't want me back after that. Or I turned from him so many times. He's done trying. And then he's still like, no, take my hand. And then how he uses his people to show his love visibly and physically. Like, in that, like, so then as believers listening, being like, who can you be that love of Christ for? But then also for the non-believer, or the believer who's just, the temptation of sin is real. Yeah. What it looks like just to, like, love well in that, and being like, no, come home. Like, grab my hand. Like, that's not the end of your story. And it would be easy to end our story in shame. Right. Because it feels like what you said, a brick. Like, it feels so heavy, and it feels like everything's done and life is ended. But then it's like the freedom found when putting the shame at the foot of the cross and being like, I'm broken, I am lost, please help me. And he does give us new eyes. Yeah. And we do have to, also walk in obedience in that, and, like, of course, open up our Bibles and show up to church, and, ask for a good community. Yeah. But, like, it is so kind to see him give us a new heart and a new eyes. and that's really sweet to see your story. I keep saying, like, it's really cool coming in as, like, the younger girl, and I've never seen older girls pursue the Lord like y'all have, and it has been so incredible and so encouraging, and I just feel so safe and, like, taken care of, and I'm like, "Can I just be like a baby?"
Makes me wanna cry.
But then just, like, book club every week and listening to people talk and then going to FCA and watching everyone worship, it's like, this is so cool to see these older girls fully pursuing the Lord. But then to get to hear your stories of being like, this is where you were and this is where you are now. And I didn't know you before, but I get to see how the Lord has transformed you. So it's really cool to hear being like, this is what the Lord did in your life. And now I get to see the fruit of that. And not that it's all easy and all perfect. And there's still struggles and trials, and there will be until we get to heaven. But it's really sweet to see the, like, transformed side of being like, oh, whoa. Like, that's so cool. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful where you're at right now too, because you came into college and you trusted some of these other people that have lives that, you know, are trying to look like Jesus's life, and you're like, wait, I trust that more than all of these other temptations and all these other things. So honestly, like, that's so cool that you are mature enough to be able to choose that path for yourself too.
The Lord was very kind in that. It was like, that was not my own like will and everything, but the Lord was kind in being like, no, here it is. And I experienced a lot of things in high school that showed me that it was worth more.
Wait, I want to hear more about
I'll
that
tell you
at some
later.
time.
Yes. So that's so cool. Your story's awesome.
Thanks.
The Lord is so cool in your life.
Jesus, it was all the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, my entire story, like, just him everywhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here talking about, literally, I wouldn't have anything to talk about without him.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think for the listener, if maybe you grew up in church or maybe you haven't, and you haven't been actively pursuing the Lord, he's calling you to come back to him. He's reaching your hand out and take that invitation. And
absolutely.
I think, and ask the Lord to show you who's around you that want to take care of you and pour into you and love you as you start following that journey, and you can be fully forgiven in Christ, and he wants to forgive you and he wants to love you. And he does love you even now.
And it doesn't mean that your sin is just going to go away by any means. It's still going to be something you struggle with, but it's not something that you struggle with alone anymore.
Right. That's so good. So beautiful. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next week.